thank you for bearing with us with the technical difficulties. We'll run through this agenda here and answer any questions, and I know Bane has somewhere to be tonight, so.
It's gonna be a long one, Bane.
All right, we'll start with approval of minutes. First, we have December 28th, 2020, 5 p.m. work session. January 4th, 2021, 5:30 p.m. work session. And City Council regular meeting, January 4th, 2021, 6 p.m. Any questions? All right, next we have our monthly bills, approved December 2020 monthly bills. Any questions? All right, next we have public hearings. Resolution number 20-353, approved request for off-premise beer and wine license for Solly G Incorporated, doing business as Solly Convenience Store located at 1201 West Moulton Street, Decatur, Alabama, 35601 South.
Council President, Council, good evening. This was a continuation of a request for alcohol license from a couple weeks ago. And I think our police department has had time to review the information. I think they're satisfied and we're satisfied with everything. The articles of incorporation matches up what they're applying for. Everything matches, the background checks are good, everything, all the ducks are in a row. So we see no reason not to recommend. So it's recommended for approval from the revenue side, and the same from the police side, I believe.
Chief, anything else there?
No, sir, that's absolutely correct. We could not find any of the items that they may have missed or done inappropriately at this time. We have no reason.
Okay, any questions?
In the event that they're caught selling to minors, how does that process work? So say, for instance, in the future, that when they get approved for, if they do get approved for the license, what happens if they do get caught in the future?
I think if there's a complaint, I know our police department can follow up on it, but I think the ABC board is also made aware of it, and they're brought in to investigate, and they may still have people that they can bring in to try to make buys if that's the case. And I think our police department also does something similar to that also.
That's correct.
So that's how we would follow up on it. If we had complaints, that's how we'd follow up on it.
Did they give a reason for why it seems like they were on
Well,
articles
so
of
to
incorporation?
begin with, I think what it was, they tried to put it in Solly's son's name, Ali, Solly's last name, but, and I think was a minor. I think he wasn't old enough to be able to be on that articles of incorporation, and that's the reason he was taken off. And this other gentleman took over, and it was put in his name.
So it was an honest mistake.
Yes, sir. I believe that's what happened.
Okay, any other questions?
Sal, is it true that this board here, the council, can revoke the license also?
Yes, sir. I mean, any license can be revoked by the council if there's, reason. Selling to minors, if it can be proved that he's doing that, or maybe is selling unlicensed cigarettes there, or, I mean, there's various reasons of drug activity. I mean, if they're not working with the police department if there's any illegal or suspicious activities going on at the store, and they're not working with the police department or us to be able to improve that, then the council can certainly, revoke a license, and that was done by the prior council.
But I think that I would like to see contingencies put in place as far as activity. But I think, Sal, to be quite fair, it's easier said than done to revoke that, because we're actually, the state is actually going to approve this, we're passing it on to the state, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes, sir. So we make a recommendation to the state that our city council has approved it, and then.
Yeah, so it's basically not up to us, it's to the state as far as revoking their alcohol license in the end, correct?
No, I mean, the council can revoke a license, including an alcohol license. It can be revoked at this level. What I would have to do is send a letter to the state showing that on this date, this time, you guys revoked that license, and then they would revoke the state license. Yes, sir.
They might.
They would, yes, sir.
Okay. I think, my understanding always has been that it's easier said than done.
I agree with you there. I agree.
But the thing is we're on the same page. We're on the same page. I'm not arguing that. But I would like to have the activity. I'd like for them to be here and to talk about the activity, the fights and things of that nature, Chief. as far as us dealing with, them having a license, and we might not be able to do it with alcohol, but we might be able to do it in another way.
Sir, Chief Allen, they've been open for several months now without alcohol. Have you guys had any complaints or any kind of calls for service there at that location in the last couple of months?
Not as of this day.
Okay.
But the fact of the matter too, Sal, is that their business is minuscule compared to what it's gonna be once they have alcohol sales.
I
Let's be
agree.
real. Now, that's why they want the alcohol sales, because if they could survive without the alcohol sales, they would. And so they want the, alcohol sales there to pump up their business significantly. And with that being the case, I think that we're gonna see a whole lot more activity there, a whole lot more traffic. And with that, I think, we have a whole lot more problems. And we haven't had problems since then, since the alcohol license was gone, but I do want to, keep it to where any grandmother or anybody else who wants to go to that store doesn't feel threatened by that. So that's the thing that I want in place, and the understanding that we have with the owner when he comes before us.
A beer and wine license, that's separate from a liquor license, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions for Sal or Chief?
Are they gonna be here next week? The
I
folks?
can have him here next week.
I think, especially with what Mr. Jackson's saying, if we could contact them and ask them to be here, that
Not a I will ask him to be here. He'll have to have a translator. I don't think he speaks English that well, the gentleman that's applying for this license, but he can bring somebody to translate for him.
that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Sal.
You're welcome.
All right,
Let's be clear though. I mean, he might have to have a translator, but he understands well enough to operate a business there now, Sal.
Yes, sir, I agree. I'm just.
Yeah, I'm not, and you and I are not going back and forth. I'm not attacking you with that. I'm just simply saying, he understands English well enough to conduct business in our neighborhood, so I think that might be, he has a better understanding and grasp of our language than he's letting off. That's just my opinion.
And I agree, but with the translator here, there'll be no excuse that I
I got you.
understand this,
I
I
got you.
understand that.
I got you, but, okay.
all right, resolutions. Resolution number 21-4 approves special use permit for T-Mobile to modify existing equipment at 3917 T San Susie Cave Road. And you want me to read the next one too?
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay.
I'll cover both of them.
Okay, resolution number 21-5 approves special use permit for Verizon to modify existing equipment at 1011 Prospect Drive Southeast.
Good afternoon, President Council. My name is David Andrews. I work for the Center of Municipal Solutions. We are the telecommunications consultant for the city of Decatur. You'll see us in here from time to time when we have modifications, co-locations, or new towers being built within the city. We represent the city and we do all the technical reviews on the applications and all of that work, and then we bring recommendations back to the city council for approval. The first resolution you see here tonight is a modification by T-Mobile. This is an existing 110-foot monopole on San Susie Cave Road, and T-Mobile is providing service at the top of that pole, which is at 110 foot. They currently have 3 antennas mounted on the pole. And what they're wanting to do is remove those 3 antennas and replace it with 6 antennas. And this is for an anchored T-Mobile Sprint project, and this will provide 5G service for the Danville Road area out southwest of town. CMS has reviewed the application and recommends approval on that one. The second resolution is for Verizon, and it's at 1011 Prospect Drive. This is at Decatur High School. It's actually at the stadium. Several years ago, they did a drop and swap with one of the lights at the stadium. So they took the existing light down and they put up a new light pole and mounted the light. And of course, T-Mobile and Verizon provide service from that pole at Decatur High School. This is also a technology upgrade for Verizon. They currently have 6 antennas mounted on that tower, and they want to take down all of those antennas and put up 9, and this is for a 5G upgrade for the Decatur Hospital in the downtown Decatur area. CMS has reviewed the application and also recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. David, any questions? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next resolution number 21-6, approve renovations to Mayor's Office for Communications Specialist. Mayor, are you on the line? Mayor?
Yes, sir, I am, Council President, Council. This is improvements for office space for the communications specialist. As you come onto the 6th floor from the elevators, walking directly toward the legal area is a space that was once used for receptionist purposes, and wanting to modify that area to retain the functionality for a receptionist and then allow for an office space for the communications specialist. I shared this information with the council a few weeks ago, and beyond what I've just shared with you, really nothing has changed. Be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? All right, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, resolution number 21-7, approve capital purchase of video camera equipment and streaming upgrades for the IT department. Kyle?
Good evening, council. This is just some housekeeping. We purchased some cameras for the, you'll see here. It has been submitted reimbursed for the CARES Act, and this is just giving us the ability to record it as a capital item. And that's essentially it.
All right, any questions for Kyle? Thanks, man.
Yep.
All right, next we have ordinance number 21-4438, approve wastewater ordinance amending section 23-89 of the Code of Decatur, Alabama. Mr. Horton?
Thank you. Council President and council members of the council, good to be back with you. Wanted to kind of go back over some information relative to our recommendations for our wastewater improvement plan. You've seen part of this presentation before. You'll advance the slide. I'll just kind of cover a few of these slides that we've seen before and a few new ones that I hope will address a few questions that have come up since then. But the 10-year plan that we're recommending deals with several competing interests. You know, we've got regulatory interests for SSO violations that need to be addressed. We're currently negotiating a final settlement with ADEM on that SSO order for the future. The 10-year plan shortens the duration of the construction phase that would be going on. You know, we looked at 5, 10, 15, and 20-year plans. We didn't, obviously the 5-year plan was too aggressive and not practical for the level of construction that would be required. But the longer term plans were not attractive because we just didn't want to have that kind of construction going on that long throughout the community. We believe, I'll get into why this is the case, that the affordability for the 10-year plan really has improved because of the type of financing we're going to be using. And it also allows us to borrow all the money up front, and that mitigates any future rate adjustments that might be needed. Next slide. So the 10-year plan is in review. It's about 1 million feet of sewer pipe to be replaced over 10 years, averaging about 100,000 feet a year. We've also identified several large collector mains that will have to be replaced or extended. And then we've got the lift station number 7, which is known as the Pines Station, that will be replaced as part of this plan. The next slide deals with our financing. We've got very good credit ratings in the water and wastewater systems, as good as you can have for a system like ours. We recently did some refinancing and combined the bond indentures for several old debt issues, and we're able to save some funds there with the refunding. The primary thing that's been a benefit to us with the financing is taking advantage of taxable interest rates, since they're as close to tax-exempt bonds as we've ever seen. Typically with tax-exempt bonds, you can only borrow enough money that you can spend in 3 to 5 years. You can't go borrow 10 years worth of work. But in taxable bonds, The rules are different, and you can go borrow 10 years' worth of work in one time. With the attractive rates now, it makes a lot more sense to try to do that and not have another rate increase 5 years from now that would add on to what would happen now. Next slide. So the bill impacts, as we've talked about, for the 5/8" meter, the typical residential bill is for a total of $195, will go up by $20 over a 3-year period. That takes into account $22 increase in the sewer bill and a $2 decrease in the power bill that was passed along a few months ago. With the 5/8" meter, that'll be broken down into 3 steps, as we've talked about: $12 the first year, $6 the second year, and $4 the third year. One of the things that some of the questions, and I'm gonna get to this in a little more detail soon. There have been some questions about, well, why haven't we put more burden on the large users? And we just haven't really focused on that, because the 5/8" meters is, and the 1" meters is really where the bulk of the revenue comes from, because there's 20,000 meters there. But we'll get into that detail, and I'll show how that has evolved. The next slide. One of the things we wanted to point out that's new, and this was really a coincidence of timing, but it's going to impact customers that might be having some difficulty here. Really due to the COVID spike that we've seen in our community in the last couple of weeks, we made the decision last week to suspend disconnects. We're not going to be disconnecting services for a period of about 9 weeks from today through March 15. We did this last year at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. It was something that we were able to work through by communicating with customers proactively and reminding them that if they were behind, to try to help them stay current as possible and helping them with payment arrangements. But this is a period of time that we've just never seen before, and we felt like it would be of benefit to our customers to have a period of relief where they don't have to worry about being disconnected. Obviously, we're going to be reaching out to customers who do fall behind, try to encourage them to continue to make payments where they can, and they can reach out to our customer service staff to find out what resources in our community are available to help with those bills. Community Action is extremely active in providing utility funds through LIHEAP, and then several of the other community associations and churches are available and do help citizens with that as needed. So that's something that I think, while it's COVID related, will dovetail in with someone who might be having difficulty with this issue. The next slide. This is a little bit hard to see maybe, but what this shows is the stepped increases of the access fees for every meter size. And so what you may not be able to see from the back there is that we focused on the 5/8" meters, where it's going to go from $8 to $30 spread out over 3 years, a $22 change. What we haven't talked about is the large meters, the 6 and the 8 and the 10 and 12" meters. The 6" meters, for example, are going from $575 to $5,000 in 3 years. The 8" meters going from $700 to $6,000. So we are spreading out the impact of this increase to every customer class, every meter size, as fairly as we know how to do it. But you can't overcome the numbers of 20,000 meters in that small customer class versus only about 12 customers in these large customer classes. So there's just only so much you can get from them. But I think we have fairly distributed the revenue needs among all our customers. So that chart just shows the steps. For example, this is the 6" customer. This is today's access fee and the 3 steps of increases that will go over the next 3 years if this is approved. And then the last slide comes back and shows our total bill, total utility bill. The top line is $195. That's today's current bill. You see 3 years of step increases that are proposed, and even at that, even if all of those are implemented, we will still be the second lowest total bill, and that's based on everyone else's rates as of today. We are aware that several of these communities will have rate adjustments based on their own needs, on infrastructure issues. But I'm happy to take any questions. I hope I've addressed some of the questions that have come up since last week, especially relative to the large customers. I hate Councilman Jackson couldn't stay because he's been vocal about that, and he's wrong about it. We have dealt with this from a fair standpoint across all customers. And so we believe that that's something that we need to do to be fair. And as I talked about last week, we want to recover our cost from the areas that are causing that cost. First of all, it needs to be in the fixed charge instead of the volumetric charge, because of the fact that it's covering a fixed debt. And then also we've spread that out among all those customer classes. So, back in the wintertime, and we've been fortunate so far this winter, we have not had a lot of heavy rain events. When the big rain events happened and these SSOs start happening, it's easy for people to talk to the newspaper and be critical and say things like, DU needs to have their hair on fire fixing this. Well, this is what having our hair on fire looks like. This is a very aggressive plan, and it's something that we need to do to make a permanent repair, permanent fix into this, for this community. We recognize that it's a substantial increase that's not easy for some to tolerate, but there are a lot of resources for assistance, and we believe breaking it out over a 3-year period is a fair way to separate those increases. So I'll pause there and ask if there's any other questions, or if I can answer any questions.
I've got just two. In the beginning of the slide, you discussed a settlement with ADM. Has this plan been communicated with them yet in regards moving forward?
It has in general, but the settlement that we will enter into with ADM, and it's still not completed, this will far exceed what ADM's requirements of us will be. ADM's requirements will be several things. We'll be looking at the hydraulic capacity of the treatment plant to look at where we have additional capacity. We'll be looking at the system-wide sewer of analysis, which has already been completed. That's a requirement of that order. And they don't really give a lot of defense. They don't say, hey, you got to replace X amount of feet per year. They simply have a standard of you need to reduce and mitigate SSOs. And then at the end of that 5 years, they are the judge as to whether you've achieved compliance. So we know that what we believe that this plan will be far exceed what they will require of us.
Okay, and one other, you discussed last week that this issue is not significant to Decatur, that other cities have the same issue. Do you know of any other plans in those cities, or if they're aggressive as this one here?
I know of other cities who are dealing with this problem, SSOs particularly. I'm not familiar with all the details of their plans, but none of them are this aggressive in taking a look at the total system. And we're talking about the clay pipe that's the primary contributor to these problems, and trying to do a full replacement of that. Scottsboro and Gadsden, and I think down in South Alabama, maybe Troy or Enterprise, have had several similar orders over similar issues, and in most of those cases, they're unique to that system, so it's not a full replacement of that system.
Thank you.
Mr. Ray.
Hey, Ray, this is Tab.
Yes, sir.
You know, around this time a year ago, I was pretty critical about the state of our system. And it's clear that the board and the department as a whole has truly responded, and in a good way, and in an aggressive way. The timing with the financing to do this that will, based on the work that needs to be done and where the financing could have been, will have a minimum impact on our customers, your customers. And then the timeline that the board elected to go with will help get this in the history books. So I want to commend everyone on the response. And again, we've talked about this a couple of times, but it's vital that there's a good communication between DU and the city as it relates to coordinating to ensure that we're able to be in line to restore our streets as a result of the damage that will come from all the pipe bursting. And so will you take just a moment to kind of explain the pipe bursting process and what it will do to our streets, please?
I will. Thank you, Mayor. The primary method of rehab that will be used in this plan is called pipe bursting. It's very non-invasive when it comes to the surface level. A reamer is pulled through the existing pipe, and a new pipe is pulled through. You take that section of line out of service temporarily to do this, and then there is an excavation at each location where a service ties into that line to tie into the new pipe. There are a lot of places where pipe bursting will occur in alleys or under streets where the surface won't be damaged very much, and you'll have a few patches. And then, of course, we'll follow the city standard in how we repair patches so that there's not a lot of potholes along the way. But pipe bursting is the least intrusive method of rehab for this kind of work. There will be some open cutting and boring types of trenching as well, construction as well. But by and large, the pipe bursting method will be the primary rehab method. And then we'll have some additional things like lining manholes with a product called Spectra Shield, which is just what makes the old concrete in those watertight. Or sometimes we'll be replacing manholes if those manholes have got structural problems. But I hope that answers that question.
And one thing, I know others got questions too. What type of pipe will be HDPE that you'll be?
Primarily HDPE pipe.
And what's the lifespan of that, if you know?
You know, the manufacturers have, they use a conservative figure of 50 years, but there's not much HDPE pipe that's been in the ground that long. Based on the material, I think it's probably more like 70 years, but we'll depreciate it over less than 70 years. So it'll be probably 40-year cycle or 50-year depreciation schedule.
So, Ray, I got a question for you. So, I actually have a couple of questions for you. Number one, this is some questions that I received from the public that I grouped basically all in about 6 questions, which 2 of them I'm not going to ask. One of them is, why can't we raise the rates off usage? And this isn't really to explain to me, it's more to explain to the public, because that's more what I've been receiving the past couple of weeks,
Yeah.
So, well, why can't we base it off usage?
Well, we've looked at that. First of all, because this is going to be creating a fixed cost, we need to use the fixed component of the rate. The rating agencies will really have a concern with us adding revenue to the volumetric component if we're looking at covering a fixed cost. So that's the primary thing. The other thing is that it would unfairly distribute the recovery of revenue to customers who are not causing that impact on us. So we've looked at it, it'd be about a $2 a thousand increase. Right now, the rate is $3.05 is the component that we collect. There's some adders that the city collects, but for us, $3.05 is about what our rate is exactly what our rate is. It would have to go to over $5 per thousand. And so that really defeats our purpose of trying to collect a fixed cost for a fixed recovery of a debt.
Okay, so another question I have is, why aren't we fixing it now? Why didn't we do it 10 years ago? So when this, I don't know when the problem, I don't have an exact date when the problem actually come about, but, you know, well, why didn't we attempt to attack it many years ago when the problem did get recognized that it was an issue?
Let me jump on that one, because I had a friend whose dad worked for DU, and he brought some information for me to research this. In 1984, DU's administration went to their board and said, hey, we're gonna have to raise the rates of our sewer so we can replace it, because in 2014, it's done. And we made it a few more years, but the board continually denied a rate increase. And that's kind of where we are here, so I wanna, commend your board and commend you, because we've got to fix it. It's been kicked down the road too long. We have no choice.
That's exactly right. There have been, every board that has served our utility has dealt with issues at the time dealing with issues that they knew about at the time. But there was an unhealthy focus on being the lowest rates, the lowest cost. And that there were times in the past where DU needed to invest in infrastructure, and that meant they needed to raise rates, and they chose not to. And so we are dealing with kicking the can down the road a little bit. But in the past 10 years, you ask about the last 10 years, we have been working on this for well over 10 years aggressively. But we developed a plan that was, the first 10 years was was focused on lift station replacements. There's been 6 lift stations replaced in the past 10 years. Each of those in the neighborhood of $4 to $6 million a piece. And so we had debt service associated with those. And I could go down the list: Highway 31 South, the Country Club at Stratford, Riverview, the Beltline Station, Mallard Fox Industrial Park, all of those associated with adding capacity to the system. Now, and it was intentional that we did it that way, so now that we can deal with the collection system that is receiving that water. So that's been intentional as far as the way we've done the rehab work. And there has been some pipe rehab done all during that time, about 25,000 feet a year. But as we've talked about before, that's a 40-year pace, and that's not good enough. So,
well, thank you. That's the information.
One question I have is, so we've got this budget in place, and we know we can't, on the taxable bonds, you could do it on a 3-year draw. How confident are we that we won't see a major material price increase when we get to years 7 through 10? Is there a chance that you have to come back to us for an increase because price of materials has gotten out of whack, or are you buying it all on the front end? And
I don't think we'll buy more than a year's worth of material at a time. But if you look at the ratio of cost on a project like this, about 90% or more is labor. And so now we have a CPI adjuster that's available in the rate structure, in the rate ordinance. We don't anticipate needing that over this, at least in the 5-year planning window. Whether it's in year 8 if something changes and we needed a CPI adjustment to cover those kind of things. But we'd have to just make those decisions at that time and see. Petroleum pricing really drives HDPE pricing. And so, I would say politics probably drives that more than anything.
So the 165, you feel like the 165 million is the best guess we can come up with?
Yeah, I mean, our engineering staff has put together a very detailed budget for this project. And it's, as I said, it involves numerous projects. It's not just 1 million feet of rehab. Obviously, we've had to estimate how much of that is going to involve paving restoration, because all the paving restoration is built into that number. Some of the projects where we're gonna be replacing large collectors, be gonna involve easement acquisition and dealing with, a couple of railroad crossings. And so there's a couple of projects that will be a little more expensive than others. And so we've done our best to estimate that. Most of those will be in the first 5 years. We feel pretty good about our estimates there. I think in the first 5 years, you're gonna see a major improvement, and then we'll be, continuing the pipe bursting after that.
I assume there's some contingency built in throughout the budget if materials were to increase in the future.
There is, I mean, you don't know what labor is gonna cost. All of this will be contracted through outside firms. Labor prices could come in better than we expected. But again, that's gonna be the biggest variable, is the cost of labor. Material prices could fluctuate 10% or 15% either way, and don't think it would make a difference in our estimates.
And this is a large enough project, you could be looking at contractors bidding it from all over the US.
Yeah, we've talked with contractors from Texas and companies that do this on a large scale, and feel like they can come in and mobilize and do a good job managing this kind of work.
You may not know, do you know maybe a number of contractors that would be indicated for this project? For a year, maybe?
On the front end, I think we will divide this up and bid out a couple of small contracts, maybe 25 or 50,000 feet each, before we jump into doing 100,000 feet, because we want to be sure we make sure we know how to manage that work. But if you bid out 100,000 feet, we're looking at one contractor that might have multiple crews, multiple superintendents, that kind of thing, to manage the work.
I think, Ray, this is a great plan, and I think that the original kind of public meeting you guys had, we had the different options, and they all consisted of like you said, every 5 years a new borrow. We have no idea what rates are gonna be, so obviously being able to borrow it all up front at historic low rates is a huge advantage. It also gave the opportunity, in those, within kind of that original plan and the work that Steve and his team did, that gradual increase where it's 10 or 12, 6, and 4, as opposed to just a one-time increase that would hit, folks a little harder.
Right.
So, I think from the hand we have, I can't think of a better option than what your team came up with. And I think you're right that rates had been held low artificially.
Right.
That our infrastructure was suffering because of just the obsession, or whatever word you used, of low rates. And now we're getting back to DU's mission, which is to keep rates really low, but also provide the best possible service. It's a fine line, and I commend you and your team for this plan, and I think it will do nothing but put us as a leader. I mean, Mr. Pike talked about it earlier. Nobody else is being this aggressive with this issue, so thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. I do think that our team has put together a plan that will serve our community well. It's the most affordable option that we could consider, and then we'll be able to look back and see a long period of time of good service from this new infrastructure that will prevent the problems in the future. So.
There's a lot of variables, but what it really comes down to is, do you want to fix this issue or do you not?
Yeah.
And that's it. So, thank you.
Well, still available for questions anytime this week. If you have anything, just shoot me an email, and we'll be glad to try to answer those for you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ray.
Okay, one more. Joseph is hanging on, I guess, or Matt. Ordinance number 21-4439. Approve annexation 362-20. Joseph or Matt?
Hi, yeah, this is Joseph. This is annexation 362-20. As you noted, this is 1.67 acres, and this is the portion that has already been pre-zoned to M1A. It is adjacent to the existing Raceway gas station, at the corner of Highway 20 and Beltline Road. And it is of the two annexations that are before you guys, this is the westernmost one, and the other one will be considered at the subsequent meeting, along with the pre-zoning for that part.
Okay, thanks, Joseph. Any questions? Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Okay, we will, next regular work session after next week will be January 25th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Next regular council meeting, February 1st, 2021 at 6 p.m. Our meeting next week, just so everybody knows, is on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Our city hall's closed on Monday for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Directors, any other comments or questions? Mayor?
I always have some slow to get to the click button. I'm good, thank you. Hope everybody enjoys the game tonight.
I will say, good to have Mayor back at City Hall today. I know he was battling the last couple of weeks, and this morning wanted everybody to know he was grateful for the health care he received and all the prayers from the public. So good to have Mayor back today. Anything else from council?
Surely we can find a couple more things to talk about for this game.
All right, we're good.
Thanks,
No?
Thank y'all.
I've been